I'm Louise Penn and I work for Ceres Rural as an agronomist and farming consultant, looking after farms around Hamptonshire, Bedfordshire, Bucks and Oxfordshire. Well, I'm a farmer's daughter on a family farm, and I think the science behind agronomy and what goes on across the farm is really interesting. So yeah, always wanted to do agronomy. I speak to all of my colleagues and they say people have been doing it for 20, 30 years. It's the worst agronomy season they've ever had. Everyone will know it's just kept raining and it hasn't stopped. Pretty much from the second week of October, it's just rained every single month. We've broken records with the amount of rain that we've had. And it's just, most growers, at this point, they're on to past plan B, it's on plan C, D, E on some farms. And we've only really got spring crops on in the ground in the last few weeks, and there's plenty of fields that we haven't even drilled at all. So it's going to be a really challenging year for farmers. So when it comes to managing spring crops this year, there's going to be a lot of different challenges. So it's crops that are being drilled a lot later than they would have been. I mean, most years, February, middle of March, most of our spring crops are in. So it's how much do you spend on a spring crop that's been drilled a lot later than usual. It's going to be lower yield potential, so it's going to be thinking about how much nitrogen we're putting on, particularly, and then managing that crop in a way which we're not spending too much money on it. So it's making a decision across every time we put the sprayer across the field, deciding what's going in the tank to try and manage it so we're making money. So at the end of the year, when we're looking at our gross margins, we're making money on those spring crops. Potentially on some of your crops, such as your spring barley, you might be able to get away with using less inputs. So it's thinking about what you can do, potentially lowering rates, but actually if we've got a crop in the ground, because there's going to be some farmers that are not going to have their whole farm drilled, it's making sure that we are still spending enough money to keep disease out of those crops, so whatever we have got in the ground gets the best yield that it can, so we've got something in the shed to sell at the end of the day. So particularly this season, I'm seeing a lot of nutritional deficiencies, and I think that's because, especially in winter crops, because of the amount of rain, we haven't got the same rooting, same surface area of root. So actually crops, all the tissue tests I'm seeing are very deficient in nutrients across the board: boron, zinc, magnesium, manganese. So I'm making sure that every time I'm going through with the sprayer, I'm putting on as much nutrition as possible, doing more tissue tests than I usually would in the season, and it'll be the same for the spring crops, making sure that I'm keeping that plant as healthy as possible, because crops are stressed, they're going to be stressed. We're probably going to go into a drought, so keeping plants as healthy as possible. So throughout the season, I really like to try and test the nutritional deficiencies of the plant. Make sure that I'm doing that before all of the times that I'm going through with the sprayer, so before T0, T1, T2. So I like to do tissue analysis. I'm trying to get into sap analysis as well, which is giving you an even more in-depth idea of the nutritional deficiencies. Also, nitrogen, very important. I've been trialling the Yara N tester this year, trying to look at, am I putting on the right amount of nitrogen? When it comes to wheat, for milling, the protein premiums are very, very good at the moment. So it's making sure that we are meeting that 13%, getting as close to that as we can. The other really good thing is protein prediction tests, where you actually send off the entire plant off for testing. So that actually looks at how many carbohydrates are stored in the plant, and will look at how close you are to meeting that protein, so you know whether you need to go through and add a little bit more nitrogen when you do your protein top-up dose. Hillcourt Research is the people I tend to use. I think they're probably the only company that are offering it at the moment, but they take 2 to 3 days. They're really, really quick at turning it around. So you want to be doing that about second week of May, about 2 to 3 weeks after your last fertilizer dose, so it doesn't skew the results. And yeah, I've used it on 4 farms last year and it was spot on, so definitely going to be using that across more clients' farms this year. So as we head towards T2, T1s have just gone on this week. Crops are very variable. I've been using some, vary applications of my nitrogen to try and even crops out, but third dose is on now, so not much more we can do there. But it's making sure that you're going in the field, unrolling those leaves. I've got crops that have only just reached T1, and then other crops that have already got leaf 2 out and they're flying away. I think crops are stressed, they're going through their growth stages quicker than usual. So it's making sure that you're looking at those leaves, you know, your T2 application on your flag leaf. Flag leaf contributes towards 45% of yield. So it's important that we are protecting that leaf. We're getting our timing on at the correct time. Windows are short, we need to be making sure we've got the chemical on farm early enough, and when we have that perfect T2 timing, we're going through with the sprayer with some nutrition, making sure we've tidied up all of our weeds, wild oats, and making sure that, you know, the crops that are in the ground that look good this year, winter wheat is going to be bringing in the money this year, not the spring crops. We're looking after them, so we've got something in the shed and farmers are happy at harvest. The ideal T2 timing is when the flag leaves about 75% emerge across the field. So your main tiller is probably going to be fully emerged, and your other secondary tillers are going to probably, you know, going to be about 75%. So it's assessing that in the field, making sure that your agronomist is out, speaking to your agronomist about that perfect timing, so you ensure that you get it on at the right time. This year, I think it's just a case of getting to harvest, getting this season out the way, and just trying to forget about it. It's been a really tough, difficult year. I felt more like a therapist a lot of the time, more than an agronomist. And then I think it's looking towards the autumn and thinking, you know, what we're going to do differently that year. Also thinking about your soil. If you've got crops this year or areas of your farm which haven't established well, or you haven't drilled, it's not leaving that field bare. Because actually, if you've got soil that's sat wet, it's sat anaerobic, there's been no living roots in the soil, if you just leave that until harvest, you'll try and bang in a first wheat and it won't do very well. So you want to be looking at those areas of the farm and thinking about putting a cover crop in, a nice diverse mix, maybe some C4 plants, millet, sorghum, sunflowers, that's going to, you know, harvest some of that sunlight and pull the energy out through the roots. You know, we need those exudates in the soil to help boost, you know, bacteria in the soil, microorganisms, to try and bring some life into that soil, so we've got a healthier soil. So hopefully next year we can forget about this season and get some good first wheats and hopefully have a good season. Going into next season, I think we'll all be very tempted to drill earlier. I think we can't forget about blackgrass. But it's also, you know, you can't just bang something in quickly before it starts raining, because actually you need to put something in and you need to get your pre-em on and you need to get your post-em on. I've got a lot of crops this year that are full of blackgrass, and actually I'd rather they'd drilled a week earlier and got the pre and the post-em on, and we'd be in a better position than them drilling just before the rain and not getting a pre or a post-emergence herbicide on. So I think it's drilling when you know you've got enough window to do the drilling, do the rolling, do both of your sprays, because if not, then you're just walking crops full of grass in the spring. So yeah.